Næsti fyrirlesari ekki síður áhugaverður. Hann heitir Jim Grubul og hann vinnur hjá Cisco. Hefur unnið þar í 21 ár. Þannig að hann, fyrir ykkur sem vöknuðu snemmi í morgun, og þá fattið hvað ég meina þegar hann tilheyrir Dallas-kynslóðinni. Og hann mun fara svolítið í gegnum þessa miklu breytingu sem orðið hefur á tækni og hvað framundan með því að Internet of Everything. Þetta einn af þessum frösum sem við heyrt mjög oft, en hvað þýðir þetta í raun og veru og hvernig mun þetta breyta mjög mörgu. Þannig að ég ætla ekki að hafa þessi orð mín lengri. Jim, welcome to the floor. They're getting you prepared still. I said some nice things, raised some expectations.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Hi, and thanks for inviting me to speak today. I appreciate that. We're going to talk a little bit about the Internet of Everything. In my job at Cisco, oftentimes you'll see me on stage with our CEO giving the demo. And while I won't be giving a demo today, one of the things that happens when you're the CEO's demo guy is that a lot of people come to you to show you their newest, coolest technology because they'd like to have it in the CEO's presentation. And that happens both inside the company as well as a lot of small startups will come and visit me to show me their latest technology, hoping that I might be able to work it into a demonstration that we're doing at a given event. So I kind of have an interesting bird's eye view of a lot of new technologies. And a couple of years ago, people started coming to me to talk to me about the Internet of Things and all of this new connectivity. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I also want to talk a little bit about then what is the impact to your IT organization as we begin to connect all of these millions of devices. I think it was the FBI earlier today talked about numbers of, we have about 10 billion things connected to the network today, and we're going to have 30 billion by 2020. So let's dive right into it. What this is really about is the new kinds of data that are generated from all of these new things that we're connecting. It's estimated that about 99% of the things that will be connected to the internet have not been connected yet. And it's not the typical data that we think about, which I would call data at rest, the data that comes from our transactional systems. It's the data that comes from these new devices and new things that are being connected. This is all of these new smart devices and wearables and even wine grapes. We'll talk a little bit about how up in Napa Valley they're actually instrumenting the wine vines. And it's this new data that we're generating that really is going to give us some interesting opportunity. So I want to start with the wearables because most folks, how many people have a wearable at this point? Probably in this audience, most folks do. But this is just one of the wearables. This is a Garmin GPS watch that I have. And it's got a number of different sensors. This one over here on the right is a temperature sensor. You can put it on your zipper of your jacket. And there's a cadence sensor that goes on your shoe. And there's a heart rate monitor. And this is a hike that I took with my dogs in a place called Pulgas Ridge in the San Francisco Bay Area. All of this information is being collected then as you're on your hike. You can see that as I was going up in elevation, my heart rate was going up, and fortunately I didn't have a heart attack. And then I started to go downhill. Well, that's all interesting, but if you click up at the top on the Explore tab, this allows you to see not only your data, but it allows you to see the data that other people have collected as well. So this is a map of Boston. And if you'll notice that this is a heat map showing you where people exercise in Boston. That red area along the Charles River is where people jog. So if you're in the business of selling sports drinks, where are you going to go to give out free samples, right? So all of this information that we're collecting gives us the ability to become digital companies. It's interesting. Jesper talked about the becoming digital, and David Kirkpatrick, who runs a program called Techonomy, the theme of the event this year was leaders need to think more like technologists because as our lives become more digital, the place that we differentiate ourselves, the place that we show, as you saw from the slides of the market valuations, is in the digital realm. The thing that we use to create a new experience, a new customer experience or competitive advantage is digital. Now, interestingly, in this Garmin example, there's a number of technologies that are used that enable that application that shows you where people exercise. It's a combination of the things, so you'll often hear the term the Internet of Things and the Internet of Everything. And the Internet of Everything is when you take the things and you combine it with other technology trends like mobile and 4G technologies and social, where you share that information with your friends. It's a combination of those things that really equals the Internet of Everything. We like to talk about it as people, process, data, and things coming together to create this opportunity. And sometimes it's just a little more information that creates a great customer experience. So here's a package shipping company that now tells you where your package was every time it got scanned. And interestingly, in that video that we just saw, it's now real time on the map, right? You can see where your package is in real time moving on the map, right? Now, do you really need to know where your package is every moment? Do you need to know every time it was scanned? No. But if you have the choice between one company that keeps you in the dark and one company that tells you where your package is, you've just created a competitive advantage. So sometimes it's just as easy as providing a little bit more information to give us that competitive advantage. So let's take a look at some of the kinds of things that are being sensed at this point, because as the price of the sensors and the connectivity drops, we'll see more and more things. This is Ship Finder. This actually works anywhere in the world and shows you any ship that's a commercial ship that has a transponder on it. This is a parking sensor that goes in the parking space, enabling new kinds of applications like being able to find where there's an open space. It is allowing cities to create new revenue streams by being able to charge for parking based on demand. Not very many spaces, the price goes up. Lots of spaces, the price goes down. You might even be able to bid on a parking space and reserve it in the past, you know. So there's new business models that are coming out of these kinds of sensors. In automobiles, we're seeing tremendous opportunity because of all the things that are being sensed. As a matter of fact, I was having a discussion with one of the major automakers in the US. They said, if you buy one of our new cars, I know where you work, I know where you live, I know where you stop for coffee, I know what you're listening to on the radio, I know what the condition of your brakes and your tires and all of this information. And we're just trying to figure out how to use that information in a way that doesn't freak people out, but makes them want to buy the next version of our vehicle. And this brings up another interesting point, which is, you know, how much data is too much, and how much is your customer willing to allow you to track them, right? And this is where, and I'll talk a little bit more about it toward the end, but where we really have to balance this. We've got to figure out where we do something that gives a value exchange. So, for example, I don't mind the airlines tracking me because they give me free upgrades, right? And so when there's a value exchange, then your customers are not only willing but happy to provide information or to allow you to track more information. But we've got to give that value exchange. Let's take a look at agriculture for a minute. Now, these units across the top are all home personal units. You know, you can plug this in, it'll tell you on your phone when it's time to water your plant. But interestingly, up in Napa, some of the leading vineyards are now instrumenting the grapevines. And what this really shows is that when the crop is expensive, it warrants putting a network in the field to be able to measure the grapevines. And they get two benefits out of it, by the way. Number one is the water usage is 30% less for when they instrument the fields. And number two is they're generating award-winning wines every year because they're watering the grapes just the right amount. So when you have a crop that's expensive, then you can afford to instrument. As the price of sensors comes down, we will see sensors on more and more things. We don't put sensors on corn stalks because corn is not expensive enough to warrant it. But eventually we will put sensors on every corn stalk, and maybe every ear of corn, maybe even every kernel of corn at some point. If the price for the sensor comes down low enough and it's small enough and low enough power consumption, we will effectively measure anything that can be measured if there's value in measuring it. We'll see that happening as the sensors change. As a matter of fact, in terms of energy consumption, this device up in the upper right is an ECG monitor, monitor heart rate, and it has no batteries because they use two interesting technologies, one called vibration energy harvesting that uses the motion of your body to generate electricity, and also thermal electric generating, which allows the heat from your body to turn into electricity. Enough electricity for it to wake up for a moment, burst off a packet about your heart rate to your mobile device, and then go back to sleep again. And we're seeing more and more technologies like this. The medical healthcare space is another wide open space. Here's a really interesting technology by a company called Propeller Health, and they make a nebulizer, which is the device that you use to take your asthma medicine. And they put a GPS chip and a Wi-Fi chip into it so that when you take your medicine, it registers, and there's a little app, and you can see that maybe there are places you shouldn't go because you have asthma attacks, for example, on your mobile device. But interestingly, this brings up the whole concept of correlation within the data, because what they were able to do is to take the location information from where patients were having asthma attacks, and this is in Amsterdam, and they were able to correlate that with the ships that were unloading, and the fact of the matter is that soybean dust is an antagonist for asthma, and so they were able to see that ships were unloading soybean and look at the weather data and put those three things together and determine that people were having asthma attacks downwind from the ships unloading soybeans. So it's about correlation, and when you can correlate all of these new kinds of data types, it creates interesting opportunity. In this case, maybe send a text message to the person that's downwind and to let them know to shut their windows for the next hour while we're unloading soybeans, for example. This is interesting data that I think it was the Jawbone folks that just put this out. There was an earthquake in Napa in California a couple of weeks ago. It was actually pretty strong. I live in San Jose, which is about 35, 40 miles away, and it shook our house pretty good. It was a 6.0 earthquake. And this is the sleep patterns of people that have wearable devices, have the Jawbone wearable device, and it shows you how many people woke up based on how far away they were from the earthquake. So again, interesting. I'm not sure what the business opportunity is here, but as we get all of this new data, we're going to be looking for those ways of turning that data into value that we can use in our businesses. The gentleman from the FBI also talked about the industrial networks, and these are things that are already connected today, typically with older twisted pair technologies. These are all moving onto the IP network. So all this plant manufacturing, process control, all of these systems are moving toward IP, which of course is a security risk, but it's also an opportunity to take data from all of those things and turn it into interesting and meaningful information that can be profitable. And we make a whole series of ruggedized devices, a commercial for Cisco here, to connect these things. Also, a lot of times people don't think about video as a sensor, but video analytics allows you to measure things. You can determine how many people are in line. You can count things. You can set up thresholds, and when something crosses the threshold, and this allows you to put sensors on things that you normally wouldn't put sensors on, just because you can do that from within video analytics. The other thing that's happening is that the sensors and the connectivity is getting less expensive and smaller. So here's a couple of examples. This is a Texas Instrument chip. This is a prototype board on the left-hand side here, but the chip in the middle has an IPv6 stack running on it. It has integrated Wi-Fi, and it's 99 cents today. So this chip could go into any light switch or tire pressure gauge or street lamp or anything for $1. And that's today. What's going to happen a year from now? On the right-hand side that's a whole computer. That's an Intel computer on a micro card that Intel has built. So we're seeing these technologies come down in price and get smaller, lower power consumption. We don't have sensors on water glasses to tell the waiter when to refill your water glass yet because they're not inexpensive enough, but we will when they get that small and that inexpensive. And that creates new opportunities. Now, the other thing that's a challenge with all of this is the amount of data that's being created. And just a couple of examples. An aircraft engine generates 10 terabytes of data on the new airplanes and every 30 minutes of operation. And it's very difficult, especially in situations like aircraft or oil rigs, to be able to take and bring all that data back to a centralized processing location, because typically this is the way we do it. We bring it back into the cloud or into a centralized location, and we process that data to get our insights. But this brings up the concept of fog computing. So instead of taking all of the data from the edge and moving it to the middle, how about if we take some of that compute and we move it out to the edge and we do the processing on it at the edge and do our analytics at the edge, where we can then make a decision and then make a change. So here's an example of that. This is the railway industry, where they're starting to use these technologies. So in this freight train right here with all the boxes on it, you know, if you're in the business of moving freight and that train stops, you're not making money. And so using what we call fog computing, or something called IOX, which allows a Linux operating system to run in your wireless technologies, you can now run a ruggedized device right on the train, run some processing to do analytics on the bearings in the wheels on that train, and then you can take that car offline before it breaks. And there are many instances of break fix where when you fix it before it breaks, it's much less expensive than if you wait until after it breaks. So another component of this. The other thing about the Internet of Everything is that we have all this location data that's coming from all of these devices. So this is a solution we have that Cisco has, works with our wireless technology called CMX, Connected Mobile Experience. And it allows you to create heat maps of where people are located, for example, in retail, so that you can see what part of your retailing is working well. And having that location information allows you then to make decisions or give people information in context of their location. And, you know, the answer to almost everything is online, right? Having access to that information in context of what we're doing is what starts to get really interesting. And of course, there's many different technologies that are giving us the ability to interface through voice, or even this is an experimental technology that somebody is working on, being able to put the Google Glass right in your eye, for example, so in a contact form. And we'll see more and more of these things, because it's about having all of that information, but then giving it to people in context of what they're doing, which is creating this tremendous value. And it's a combination of people, process, data, and things. Giving people, connecting people in more relevant ways and giving them the information that they need at the right time, along with all the data from the data in motion, as well as taking the data from our traditional data systems and bringing that all together. And that creates what we have estimated to be a $19 trillion opportunity. And it's a combination of all of these technologies, mobile and social and big data and cloud and the Internet of Things coming together, that creates this opportunity. And if you want to learn a little bit more about that, there's a link here, internetofeverything.cisco.com, and you can look at this data and see where we think the opportunities are. So I talked a little bit about the opportunity to do the right thing because of the balance and the need for balance, and need for that value exchange of that data. And as I said, the important thing here is that we have a value exchange. We have to create things that give value back to the person that you're collecting the data from. You know, there's an interesting online service called Mint. Anybody use Mint in the audience here? Mint is a cloud-based service. You put in your bank account credentials and your credit card credentials, and it takes all of that data and turns it into a quicken kind of view for you in a single page where you can see all of your financial information. It automatically categorizes your transactions. That service, I'm assuming that it's safe. I put my personal information in there. I'm trusting them with that. But what they get back from that is they get the occasional ad that tells me, you know what, that credit card that you're using, you're paying a much higher interest rate than you need to. Here's one that you could use that would cost you less. Or this investment that you have is not returning much. Here's an alternative. Now, the way that Mint does that, it's incredibly non-intrusive. So for the value that service brings to me, I'm willing to give up my privacy and my data to them, of course, assuming that they're not going to share it with other folks, for the opportunity to market to me because there's a value exchange. And ultimately, there will be some companies that do the wrong thing with the data. There will be companies that will make money in the short term by doing the wrong thing with the data. And by the way, doing the wrong thing can be as simple as sending me an ad that I really don't want, right? But the companies that do the right thing with the data will be those companies that thrive and survive in the long term. So I urge you, as you're inventing these new ways of new experiences and with all this new data, do the right thing with the data. Do the right thing and find a way that creates lasting value for your customers. And the last part of this really is about then what is the implication for IT? Because we can't do IT the way that we've been doing IT. If we're going to connect all these 30 billion devices, you know, it's just not going to work. Everybody hates IT, right? You know, you've heard this. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. Okay. This is an interesting statistic from Zayas Caravala, an analyst in the U.S., and he says that he did some research that shows that 83% of the average IT budget is being spent on things that have already been installed and turned on, right? And that's up from 75% just 5 years ago. So how are we possibly going to take advantage of that $19 trillion of value of the Internet of Everything if we don't change the way that we're doing IT, right? And as I said, everybody hates IT, right? If you've heard these questions before, why does it take you so long to deploy my application? And why does it cost so much? And are you going to lose my credit card data? Have you heard that from your customers, from your businesses? So how do you make the business love IT? And this is Jim Grubb's 5-step plan for how you make the business love IT. Number one, focus on what your business cares about. Your business cares about the app, right? They don't care about the server group and the storage group and the networking group and everybody else. They care about the app. So focus on delivering the app and organize that way. You've got to change your organizational structure as an IT organization to focus on the app or the service that you're delivering to the customer. And virtualize and automate. Use software to do what you've been doing manually in the past. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Create a hybrid infrastructure, right? So a hybrid infrastructure means on-prem and off-prem. It means in the private cloud and the public cloud. It means the physical machines as well as the virtual machines, because this gives choice, that hybrid infrastructure. And of course, we used to say rule number one, don't drop the baby, right? Well, you got to do all of this without losing the credit card data, right? We have a methodology at Cisco we call Domain 10 if you want more information about this, but this is about how to make this transformative step as an IT organization. And it really is about the things that you see over here in number 4, the customer interface, creating a services catalog and the financial system to be able to offer and to move from months to deploy a new capability or new application to minutes. This is what it's really about. And there's a whole methodology called Domain 10 that we used in our own internal IT organization to go through this process, and we'd be happy to share that with you. We also announced recently this year something called ACI, and this is our application-centric infrastructure. We heard our customers talking about software-defined networking and asking for that, and we took that beyond the network to essentially a software-defined architecture that allows you, through something that is at the center of it called the application, APIC is the Application Policy Infrastructure Controller. We have too many acronyms. And what this allows you to do is to essentially automate the deployment of new IT apps or services through the use of automation in the network, in the storage, in the compute, in the security, and all of these components together. So essentially what you do is you create what we call an application network profile that is essentially a template. So this talks about moving from one-off implementations to creating a template that then takes that profile and then using software deploys it across your entire infrastructure. And this is all of the infrastructure. The load balancers, the firewalls, the cloud, the storage, the compute, the network, all of it together. And this is what we call ACI. ACI in combination with what we call intercloud gives you then the choice and the flexibility of running your workloads either on your own private cloud or in the public cloud, and the ability to move that back and forth. Intercloud Fabric is hypervisor independent, so it works with all of these different environments, and it's cloud independent, so it works with all of these different cloud providers to give you the ability to move workloads. So what it looks like is this. You have a workload in a cloud somewhere. It can package it up, translate it, and move the entire infrastructure into your own private cloud, or if you want to take it from the private cloud and move it back out to a public cloud, you can do that as well. And this is what we call intercloud, the intercloud fabric technology that allows this to happen. And then finally, the APIC controller also allows you to deal with security in a dynamic, automated way. So in an example here, out at the edge, you detect a threat. And we can do analysis on that threat with our SourceFire technologies. From that, we can then create a new policy that gets deployed on our entire software-defined infrastructure or architecture. And this allows us then to deal with threats in an automated way, which we think is how we're ultimately going to solve for the ongoing security problem. And that's all I have today. Thank you very much for the time today.